If there's anybody out there who's watching this,
who recorded it?
somehow been recording this on audio,
As user-generated
let us
content.
know. Hi, this is Steve Gillmor. This is the Gillmor Gang. We're starting right now.
But I have a question about HTML5 versus Flash. What about from the consumer experience? Does it make any difference? I mean, what's better? I don't really care who owns them. What's going to enable better content?
Okay, look at the iPhone and the apps on there. Do you notice on any of the apps that Flash is missing? Do you feel
No,
that's
I don't.
worthy? Does any of the games play less well because you don't have Flash? Can you not watch a YouTube video on it? No.
But well, I think YouTube is something that people had to support. There was this sort of weird thing where it started out they chose Flash to be ubiquitous, and then it became more important for people to support YouTube than to support Flash, and so Apple was prepared to work with YouTube to do the 264 thing directly, and other platforms have set themselves up to support uploading to YouTube, support playing back YouTube without having to go through Flash. So YouTube became the must-have rather than Flash video, if you like. I think that there was a sort of transition point about 18 months ago where that was the motivator, because YouTube was it is such a big site, and that Adobe chose to go with 264 was it was something I urged them to do. I'm very pleased that they did it, because it means that we can use one video format that can be played back in all these different media. It can be played back on the mobiles, it can be played back in Flash, it can be played back in Silverlight, it can be played back in QuickTime.
Right, that's the new standard.
We finally got a unified video format. Yes, it costs whoever's going to ship it $5 million a year to do that.
Right.
But
all right, now, this is the argument. The argument, another piece of roadkill that may be approaching, and I'd like to hear Danny's opinion about this, is Firefox. By not supporting H.264, I think they're putting themselves in tremendous jeopardy.
If they're not supporting things that a lot of people want, absolutely. I mean, I'm not that familiar with that video code that you're talking about.
Well, I mean,
so
basically they're saying that OGG Theora, that some sort of, undisputedly open codec is going to be more appropriate than investing in something which is tied to some sort of patent ownership. And the result is that people are going to go to Chrome, which supports it. They're going to go to Safari, which supports it. And
well, sure. I mean, they'll especially go.
And they're going to go to Windows and Silverlight, which support it.
Well,
yeah.
What will happen in practice for a while is that we'll have to write fallback code. We'll have the browsers that support it natively, and then we'll write fallback code that uses Flash or insert local media player of choice here to play it. And that will work in IE and in Firefox, which is still like most of the browser market for now. But over time, that will change. The debate I had with the Firefox guys last week was that if I choose to use the video tag, it's actually quite hard at the moment to do a fallback to use Flash. I have to write a bunch of JavaScript to do that. And I think that's a sort of structural failure of the way that the video tag's been designed at the moment, and we need to work on that to make that easier. But there's always ways to work around this compared to what we had to do 3 or 4 years ago to get stuff playing back everywhere and have multiple different versions of the file as well as multiple different code for different plugins to make it play. We're getting a lot closer than we were. And I think that the fully open codecs of Vorbis and Theora are definitely worth pursuing, and it's good that Google is stepping up and saying we're going to support these too in Chrome, and they're basically saying, okay, go ahead and sue us if there is a patent lawsuit here, come and have it with us, rather than as Apple has been saying for at least 10 years, well, we can't support this because we might get sued, which isn't necessarily a false fear. That Microsoft has paid out how many billions in lawsuits over browser plugins to a whole bunch of different patent holders over the years. So for Apple to say we're scared of being sued, there's some truth in that.
I mean, I don't
Google is now
understand
standing up
why.
and say, go ahead and sue us.
I don't understand why people think that this kind of cost, this $5 million licensing fee, it won't be laid off on the content that's being carried on those browsers.
It's what it is it's laid off on the device that's able to play it back.
No, I understand that. What I'm saying is that however, whoever cuts the check for it is one thing, but
right.
where are the economics? If you've got an iTunes store and a viable Android market, and you've got all these different vehicles for being able to push content to the iPad, don't you think that H.264 licensing is going to be taken care of as a very small percentage of the price of the media?
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's taken care of by the people who are providing the playback clients. But it's almost impossible for Firefox to do that because A, they have to pay the fee, and it wouldn't actually be able to include it in the open source version of the product.
So in other words, Google, because they can afford it,
yeah.
are going to be the ones that are going to be able to make this transition, and Firefox isn't.
Well, Firefox has taken the position that they want to support fully open technologies, which is a respectable position. But they will, you can still play Flash in Firefox, so you'll still be able to use Flash to play this stuff back.
So Flash turns out to be the end run around for Firefox. That sounds. What happens when it goes to the client? What happens when, how many devices are there right now that support video mobilely? Didn't the number of devices, Danny, do you know this? The number of devices that are not desktop computers, it was passed, I think in the last 6 months or so.
Yeah, I don't recall.
There's substantially more mobile devices than there are laptops and desktop machines. Is that correct?
I believe so, but I don't know the stats offhand.
All right. So if you've got a hybrid device called the iPad that comes in the middle, and that doesn't support Flash, doesn't that put a lot of pressure on Firefox?
Well, I think the biggest part of Firefox faces is that they're not going to be on the iPad, right? I mean, you get Safari, and that's all you get.
Well,
so
and don't forget
that screws Firefox to begin with.
And don't forget the Chrome OS devices that are going to come out shortly after the iPad ships.
Yeah, that's true, because since they're Chrome, I don't think you can install another browser on them.
And certainly you wouldn't want to. Nor even if you could, you wouldn't want to. The Chrome browser experience is a lot better than Firefox.
Well, so on the iPad, you're only going to be able to get Safari. You won't be able to get any other browser.
Yeah, I mean the iPad's just a big iPhone, and so you can't put another browser on the iPhone right now. You're not going to be able to put it on the
That's
iPad.
Clever. I like that one.
What?
Well, now, Danny. I bet you're pissed about that, aren't you?
Of course, but I'm just as pissed, if you will, that Google's going to roll out a Chrome device that you can't put your own browser on if you want. And it's even more difficult in the Google case because the browser is the operating system. So they kind of get to throw their hands up and go, well, it's not our fault. I mean, Apple could run, Safari OS if they want to, and that's what we can do. So I'm not that pleased with Google on it either.
So it sounds like we've gone from a monopoly environment, Microsoft, to a duopoly environment where you have no choice from two companies as opposed to one.
Actually, I think what concerns me the most is that forget duopolies or monopolies or triopolies, it's that there's no underdogopolies out there. When we had Microsoft sitting there, it felt to some degree that we had Apple almost as an underdog that was kind of poking away at them and giving you some kind of an alternative. And I think even more so, there was a sense that Google was that kind of alternative. These days, if I don't want to feel like I'm completely supporting one of these big, huge, giant companies, I don't really know what I'd sort of turn to. There are alternatives to Google. What's that? Nokia.
Oh, please.
I'm there. if I don't like the iPhone and I want a device that seems to be as good as the iPhone, I guess I have to go get Google's phone, which conveniently I can't even use without having to have a Google account. And I know that I have to have an account on the iPhone that's linked to Apple, but it's not an account that's also going to be linked to all my web history and all my email and all these other things that Google can log as well. You know, it's more linked to my credit card than anything else. And if I don't want to use, you know, Google Chrome, then I guess I can go over and I can use Internet Explorer. I mean, Firefox kind of sits out there, but at this point, feel like they're the lone underdog to me. And they're also the lone underdog that Surprise is backed heavily by Google.
Danny, you just hit on the second front in the war that Google is playing, and that's with Facebook. I know you've written a lot on the social circles and the Google profiles, and are you hearing? Well, I've heard pretty definitively that they're coming out with a microblogging service that's going to build on top of those two things. What are you hearing?
I haven't heard that they're going to have a microblogging thing. I wouldn't be surprised if they did it. They've been building out the Google profile system, you know, to let people claim their own pages. But they've been kind of a mess socially. They've got all these different things, and they haven't been pulling together. They brought in a bunch of people to do more work on the social front. So, you know, I could see them letting you, you know, update your status and send it out and say Google Talk. If you can't do that already, I think you can. I could see them trying to do it with Gmail. I could see them trying to add it into your profile page. But
I think, you know, Google has failed on a lot of social fronts up to today. Ken wrote Jaiku. There's Dodgeball. There's Orkut, which is popular in Brazil but nowhere else. And there's a few other programs. But this is different. This is a different Google. They're building their own thing from the ground up, and they're not buying companies and trying to latch them into the system. I find it fascinating. Have you played a lot with the social circles and seeing what they're tracking on your social graph? Like, I can tell on your social graph what you've added to your Google profile, and I can also see that they're spidering friend feed and Twitter and Yelp and other social networks, and they're aggregating all that data together, and I bet they're going to build a feed of some kind.
Sure, I could see them doing that. I mean, but they already kind of have that with their real-time feed that they've got out there now. What they haven't done is mesh together a real-time feed that matches your social network, right? So when you do a search on Google right now, and if I were to search for, I don't know, let's see if people are talking about iPad, but I'm going to do a search for iDad. That's a new one coming out from Apple, too. It doesn't do Flash. So I search for iPad, and I get a little box up at the top that says latest results from iPad for iPad, and I can see all the real-time stuff that's primarily what people are tweeting about on that topic. Now, because I'm in Social Circle, when I scroll down to the bottom of my page, I might also see in another box anything somebody in my social network has written about the iPad. But they're separate things, and at some point they may blend them together where I get real-time results that are coming just from my own friends and followers and people that I know. And sure, maybe they can put those things together. But the key thing about Google Social Network right now is it has nothing to do with you really being socially connected on Google. It can tap into your Gmail contacts, sure, and it can tap into your reader contacts, but what tends to be most compelling, at least for me, and maybe because I don't actually have that many Gmail contacts, is that they're leveraging your social network from across the web from just all the public stuff that they can see. They can tell who you say you're friends with publicly, and they can pull all that stuff together. Yeah. And maybe that'll be their forte going forward. Their forte so far has not been to build their own social networks.
Well, the only reason that the profiles are going to work is because of these new devices. I mean, when Nexus 1 came out, that was the first time that I even, cared about the information in my profile. I didn't have any phone book.
Well, they come in for different reasons. I mean, some people have already wanted to take them because when you do a search on your name, it's a way, if you will, to claim your name. So there was an initial adoption of those profiles in that way. Right. Other people have claimed them because they're active on a Google service, let's say Google Maps, and they want to have that profile, or they're commenting through Blogger, and the profiles are being tied into Blogger more. Yeah. So, but the social circle now.
And this is why, Danny, I brought this up in terms of a mobile device, because when I signed on my Google Nexus 1 and I put my email in there, I got all my contacts and all my apps, And soon, I think there's going to be a new feed in there of all my friends that it's going to feed like Facebook, but on the Google devices.
But
I find that fascinating.
my point here is that when there's a Google iPad, there's going to be a lot of adoption of this. It's like I was a member of Twitter for a year or so before I actually did anything with it. It took the formation of a community that was actually valuable to me to get me involved. And I think that what's going to get a lot of people involved in Google, profiles and otherwise, other than what Danny's talking about, which is, the harvesting of the existing social signals, is going to be devices that make that useful or in fact a requirement, which is why I'm not going to sit here and build out my contacts list. It's mostly IM relationships. It has nothing to do with the phone.
But that's
where the point is that the point of building the profiles in the first place, I was on the project when it was launched, was to exactly be the unified place for that stuff across Google initially, and also to provide an API for it so you could use it in more than one context. And so the contact stuff has been there, but it was part of Gmail and very email focused. And there was a big project to move that into a separate database so it could be used across many different devices and many different products. And that's been done now, which means that you can use the same contact database on the phone. You can use it in Gmail. You can use it in other applications. You can use it over an API and bring it in, which means whenever I sign up with any of these phones, it can draw those contacts in over the net, and it does. Which means,
until you have until you connect the credit card with the device, all this is bullshit. There's nothing that's going to happen socially for Google until they've got your credit card. That's what Steve Jobs understands, and he's right about that.
I'm not sure that's true. I think that's true because Google's primary monetization model is the second order stuff, the monetization of intent and advertisements. So if they can serve you better results,
if you look at what's happening in location, with Foursquare, Tina has Gowalla and Foursquare, and with push notification on her iPhone, and I sit there and watch it, and I can see what everybody's doing. So can the stores, and when the stores hook up with that, they're going to be able to grab or have permission to grab those credit card numbers, and that's going to form the economy moving forward. So from a technical perspective, you're certainly right that it made sense to build out this infrastructure so that you can do these things across these different domains. But there was no reason to do them across those domains.
Right.
Gmail and GChat, when they started to game the notion of a friend. I mean, you remember this, Kevin. We went to the mat on this.
Yeah.
Right. That was not a good experience. To sort of mandate by reverse engineering a social graph across what Google's doing. And I think everybody on this call agrees that that Google seems to have less of an affinity for the social graph than other competitors.
Yeah, well, that's fair. I mean, that was part of the point of
right. But when they
that stuff there.
But when they get a device like the iPad, or the iPhone, like Nexus 1, all of a sudden that equation is different.
Yeah, but suddenly it becomes useful in more context because it's your phone book. It becomes got a set of physical addresses in it.
It's not a question of in context. It's just useful. You can't use. I mean, I've been playing with this Nexus 1. If I want to do anything, I have to go back to the iPhone because that's where all my data is.
Yeah.
So. I wish we could sort of summarize what we said when it wasn't being recorded, but I think this is a good indication of the value of watching this show live and in real time.
Wasn't the summary that Flash is in serious trouble?
Yeah, I think so. I think I think Jamie said it best. Flash is dead. Right?
Here we go.
And
none of us care.
Well, you care, Andrew. You're a member of the media elite that is trying to sell stuff on that platform, right? Or are you moving? Are you moving to HTML5? Do you even know what you're going to be doing as far as your provider? You're with Macmillan.
I was
right?
one of the. No, I built HTML5. I know more about it than you do.
Excellent. Well, I would doubt that, but Macmillan is your publisher, right? Macmillan's your publisher, right?
So see, none of this, we've been going round and round in circles on this, but no one brought up the fact. I would have thought Danny would have brought up the fact that one of the things that will really piss people off about the iPad is that if they're a reader, they're going to have to go on it. They'll have to buy their books for $15.99 rather than $9.99. Doesn't that piss any of you off?
Yeah.
No.
It does.
Yes. It's very annoying. I mean, I kind of feel like if I'm going to buy a book and I'm not going to actually get a whole normal regular book, then I shouldn't be paying that much money for it.
But they have to pay the H264 tax, so that's where the $5 goes.
I mean, a first-run book in a bookstore is, I've paid $30 for those before, so $15 is still.
But I think that's part of the issue, and I'm on a list called Read 2.0 where this came up, and part of the discussion was that publishers our book prices are primarily tied to when the book comes out, and you get the hardback first, not because the hardback is that much more expensive than the paperback, it's just you can get it first. So I can see that maybe perhaps a better way that you go about the book pricing is you want to buy it the minute it comes out, all right, you're going to pay the $15 or $30 because you want to read it right then and there, not because of the format it came in. You're paying time-based type of situation. Yeah. You want to wait 6 months, then it goes down.
And that's just like movies,
price
right?
Elasticity over time, which is what the base of the argument between Macmillan and Amazon, as far as I can tell, is Amazon's current deal is they will pay the publisher half of whatever the cheapest edition they currently have out is. So they start out paying them half of the hardback price and end up paying them half of the paperback price. And what Macmillan is saying is what we want to do is set the price and you take a slice off the top and then we can lower that price over time to model how we currently deal with books, because the way they currently deal with books is they sell the expensive edition first for the people who really, really want it, and then make it cheaper over time and put out cheaper editions. And they want to do that for the electronic version too. For the electronic version, they wouldn't actually have to make a physically different thing and distribute it, but they want to be able to drop the price over time in that way. And at the moment, Amazon has it set up so that they'll charge you $10 for the book on the Kindle. They will lose money on the hardback edition because they're then paying half the price of the hardback, but they'll make a lot of money on when it goes down to trade paperback, because then they're only paying them half the price of the paperback, which is like $3 or $4, and they're still charging you $9 for it.
Yeah, that's the logic.
I think there's two issues going on here. Firstly, in terms of the book thing, I mean, Apple's actually breaking Amazon's monopoly, so presumably we all think that's a good thing. But I think there's another bigger issue, which is kind of implicit in a lot of the discussions we're having, which is about the quality of the experience. I mean, I'm happy to pay more for a book on the iPad if the quality of the experience is better than on the Kindle. And I think it's wrong to treat all digital experiences as the same. I think what I'm excited about the iPad is that it will represent a new way to consume digital content. And if it can't do that, then all these discussions are kind of moot. And if it does, then I think it's a great step forward for all of us.
Well, the nice thing about the book format on the iPad is that it's EPUB, which is basically HTML, which means you can do the stuff that you can do on the web with it. So, from my point of view, that's an attractive thing, as opposed to being some weird thing that only works on Kindles.
Danny, you were saying?
Well, it's that what's going to make me excited about the iPad is that when it's out there, how many different formats does it support? Because honestly, I don't want to buy a book and I can only get that book from Apple, and then I can't take that book and move it off to another device. And I don't want the book to have a ton of DRM that's all blocked into it and I can't move it around. I don't deal with that junk when it comes to the music that I buy, and I don't see why I should be dealing with books. And that's what's preventing me from being an early adopter of books that are out there now. And we got that with music. We have DRM-free music. We get it. I can run it on any MP3 player I want, and I go out of my way at Amazon to make sure I can buy it and buy it at a decent price. So I want to be able to buy my books from Amazon. I want to be able to buy my books from Apple. I want to be able to download free open books from Google if they're available. And I want one device that does it all. And to me, that's going to be the ultimate killer device. But it may be that the iPad will manage to build up a big enough market with a big enough set of books that people will turn to it in the same way that people were turning to the iPod. and deciding that, oh, I guess the only way you can get music. I mean, I still find it incredible that people seem to think the only way you can get music is by buying it through iTunes, and that those are the only two devices that ever work.
I've never bought anything through iTunes, but on the other hand, I've been spending the Razor. I've been spending money on like crazy. I bought how many iPods for this family? Everybody in this family has an iPhone. And what I do is I buy the old-fashioned CDs and I rip them to the phone, and then it comes up in the car. Right? So Bluetooth is actually what I'm paying for.
Sure.
Okay. So what is the? I mean, I think that when you say that maybe Apple is going to build up so much momentum, I don't think that's maybe. And I think that what the
right,
issue is what are the composite gestures across the Apple Google platform, and how are they going to get baked out? I mean, Amazon, in the cloud computing space, has got the same issue.
Well, I think to some degree you may have an issue when it comes to books. If you're having to spend $15 per book, that is much different than spending $10 for 10 different songs. And even though the iTunes had their own songs there were ways for, they eventually caved to the idea that you'd be able to buy the songs DRM free, and that in fact you could convert your entire library to be DRM free. So, but I mean,
well, I don't think they caved.
That's expensive books.
I don't think they caved that way. I think that they got such a stranglehold on the record cartel that they were able to force it down their throats. That's a little bit of a different kind of a transition than you're suggesting.
Well, agreed. However we got to it, we don't have to have music that's locked into, you can buy music through iTunes and carry that over to another device. You're not locked to it.
The Beatles remasterings. There's a version.
I knew the Beatles would come into this somehow. You still were a way of putting it.
I mean, you should be proud of your countrymen.
They're from Liverpool. They're not from my country.
What is your country, Queen Keen?
I'm from Alabama.
You sure are. The Beatles released an Apple format, a big green Apple format. I don't know who that is, or which. Excuse me. They released a big Apple format of all their recordings in stereo in a form that maybe Kevin knows what FLAC, I think, FLAC. It's a 24-bit.
It's basically losslessly compressed.
Yeah, it's better. It's a better rendition of that information than you can get on a CD. And that's out there now, for the reasons that Danny's already talked about. That's an extraordinary transition that will be reflected in the rest of the record business within a few months.
Put it to you this way: if you're the state of California and you've just mandated that all textbooks have to be electronic, and you decide you're going to use the iPod and you buy those all through, or iPad and you buy it all through that, are you going to be very happy that you have millions of dollars worth of books that may be perfectly valid in 5 years, but suddenly you can't run them on new devices that come in? I mean, I think we're only scratching the surface of what's happening with electronic books, and I think the iPad is going to be a big, huge boost to that space in the way that the Kindle already started it. But I don't know whether I'm, at this point able to say, aha, and that's it. It's the iPad, and that's going to do it for electronic books and everything going forward. My own feeling tends to be that we're going to have to get to a standard for what an electronic book is published in that will run on multiple devices for us to really have a great deal of widespread acceptance, where I'm not just talking about personally I bought these books here or there, but we're having electronic books in libraries. We're having electronic books, in schools that people can use and that people can go into different places. So,
well, I disagree. I think the market force of the Kindle is already well established, and I think that Apple is not going to be a winner-take-all scenario. It's going to basically be Apple and Google sort of tag teaming each other and developing
Yeah, but if you're,
standards
I mean,
that work across them.
So what's going to happen? What's going to happen now after the iPad, right? So the iPad comes out. You've got all these people who bought Kindles and bought all these books for the Kindles. Who are going, what the? Right?
Well,
How do I put my Kindle book on this new iPad I bought?
Danny, on my iPhone, I have a Kindle app, and
Well, if
I read a book halfway through on my Kindle, guess what? It turns to the same page on my iPhone app, and of course, it's going to be on the iPad. If it's not, there's going to be an outcry you've never heard before.
I mean, Amazon's going to move to the Google device just as much as they move to the Apple device. They may be owned by Google. Why does Amazon stand unchallenged in this marketplace when we are?
They don't. They've been brought down by the publishers. I mean, 3 or 4 now of the big 6 publishers have. They
haven't been brought down by the publishers. They were brought down by the announcement of the iPad.
Well, whichever way you put it.
You're talking about the pricing.
Yeah, that's true as well.
The pricing that changed this weekend was the publishers exerting pressure on Amazon.
No,
but they would never. The publishers
Apple
would never have done it
pressure
without
on
the
Amazon
iPad.
that gave the publishers an opening to have a choice of how they can market their wares. That's all. And this duopoly marketplace is an extremely powerful engine. And as I've been, trying to say about attempts by, certain open standards vendors, put it that way, to attack these strategies with fear and loss of freedom. I wonder whether people really, I wonder if, I think Danny is the only one on this call that really thinks that we are in danger of losing our freedoms here.
It's not. Maybe. It's not freedoms. I guess I just feel like we're being made even more into cogs of the big companies' money machines. That's all. You have freedoms. You can always find alternatives. You can go do it. And if we as consumers just go, down the easiest path, then to some degree we have our own selves to blame. But it's good enough, right? You can use a lot of these things, and they work perfectly fine. And you don't think, oh, I can't get Flash, or oh, I've got my Kindle book here, but dang it, I would wish I could read it natively on the iPad. And you get by well enough with this. And I know it's maybe Pollyanna-ish, but I would like to see better open standards. And one annoying thing that you get with, say, somebody like Google is when you feel like they ought to be pushing for standards, and then they don't necessarily do it. Apple, I don't know the company well enough to say whether or not they've ever espoused that they're all into open standards. I've never gotten that much of an impression off of them in terms of doing it. But yeah, I mean, it would make a hell of a lot more sense if we had a common ebook standard that everybody supported. That
we do in EPUB.
That everybody supported.
Well,
right? Because I don't.
Yeah, what do you want?
Define everybody.
Everybody who has a major e-reader.
Yeah.
Can I read the EPUBs on?
There's only 3: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and Apple.
The iPad format is EPUB.
Right. And Barnes and Noble will get bought by Microsoft. So I mean, there's only 3. Yeah, I just want to ask Danny one quick question. There's been discussions about, I forget the name of the company, the advertising company that Apple bought. Do you think that Apple has a credible opportunity to be able to get into the search space the way that Google and Microsoft are?
No.
So why, what about mobile me? Do you care?
Well, so they want to get in on mobile ads. I think they do have a credible way of doing that because they own one of the major mobile platforms that are out there. So it's very easy for them to have a mobile ad system, say to developers, hey, you want to put your ads into the apps that you're producing? We've got it all wired up and away you go. I think that's a very, very credible thing that they can do. But if they decided, you know what, we're really tired of people doing searches on our devices and using Google, so we want to come up with our own search engine, no. They're not going to do that. They just don't have the experience they need to put together. If they decided that they wanted to start putting it together, they've got to go up against two other major companies that are already there, one of which is already the default habit for people to use. The other one, which has been trying to do it for 5 years and hasn't really made a dent in Google, not for lack of trying and not for lack of technical prowess. So, you know, no matter all the brand love that Apple has in the world, if they tried to launch their own search engine, I think people would still be using their Apple devices and saying, now, how do I type in Google on this?
All right, so I'll go around the table. Which do you think will be on the iPad first, Flash or Silverlight?
Neither.
The Beatles.
The Beatles.
Kevin?
Yeah, neither.
Danny?
I like neither.
You like neither, but what do you
Yeah,
think?
I like that as a choice. I didn't think that was a choice, so I'm glad it was out there.
It's always a choice. See, we have lots of choice here. You have the freedom to not get the iPad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you going to get the iPad?
Probably.
So we have no freedom.
It is $500, right? They got my expectations up that it was going to be
Well,
1,000.
but
It's like 500, and I'm kind of curious to see it.
So
No,
you
Danny, it's $1,000 because you got to buy an iPad and a Kindle and a Chrome OS pad when it comes out.
Yeah, well, we'll see about that.
Well,
but
who
you know
says-
what? See, if you go back to the iPad, here's the other annoying thing with it is that I've got the iPhone, and I've got a SIM card in it already. But I don't think I can take the SIM card out of my iPhone and put it into the iPad because it's a smaller format, if I remember correctly, right? And then you're like, well, why can't I just at least use Bluetooth for my iPad to talk to my iPhone? It's like, oh, no, we got to... That's the maddening stuff. And what amazes me is that we put up with that crap. That's what amazes me. That I still put up with the fact that I have, you know, an iPhone 3G that I'm pretty sure could record video but doesn't seem to.
Hey,
So I gotta
people are
wait
still
till I
buying
get the
Blu-ray players, dude.
I know, but they're not buying... Yeah.
The Haiti,
I don't need that. I got a laser disc.
webcast proves that YouTube can deliver HD video everywhere in the world and have it just as good a quality as a Blu-ray player, or very close to.
Well, actually, I bought my first Blu-ray player, but you know what tipped me into doing it was not because it played Blu-ray, but it's because it was one of the Samsungs that had internet connectivity and allowed me to go to Netflix and YouTube directly, and that was awesome. And I've used that player that I got Blu-ray on it was sort of a second order thing, and I have exactly one Blu-ray disc to play on it. But I've been using Netflix on it all the time. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have a Mac?
Me? Yes.
Yeah. And so how are you getting to that Netflix thing?
On Netflix, I go through it. It's a Samsung Blu-ray player. And it has a network adapter in the back. You plug in your network connection.
So
And
you don't use it on the Mac?
Netflix? No.
Yeah.
No, just on my regular TV through my DVD player.
Okay. So you don't watch anything when it happens. What if Netflix became a third major network for live events? Where would you?
Oh, I could watch it through the DVD player. That's what I do, because I can also access YouTube through the DVD player now.
Right. You could
Well,
also.
I've heard that Netflix are going to become a search engine.
Really?
No, I think he's
Is that right?
kidding.
Once Apple puts enough investment into them.
Well, I would point out that Netflix runs on Silverlight.
Netflix is a search engine for movies. You know, that's that. If I want to find something to watch, I'll go and search Netflix. So you can argue that. Yeah.
Sure, and actually that's where the opportunity is in search, is that you're specialized. And to some degree, you know, you can argue that iTunes is a music search engine. And in fact, that if iTunes and if Apple could have pulled their head out of themselves a bit and actually made iTunes an entire web interface, right, and put all that content out onto the web, they'd have even more people coming into it and using it.
Oh, you mean like with the
because
iPad?
people would be doing searches on Google and they'd end up over at Apple. But, you know, they probably figured, well, we're Apple, everybody's coming to us, so what do we need with more
So
millions?
you don't think that's
the
what they're
point for them
doing
is
with
that
the
it's
iPad?
coupled to an iPhone. That's where the revenue is for them. So they want you to have it synced up to some device that'll play it back.
Yeah, but they're idiots, right? Because I'm on my browser, and I see that there's this app, and I want to tell somebody about the app, So I go to the URL, and the URL comes up saying, I'm sorry, you need to have iTunes. So I can't really link to it that well. I can't really describe it that well. I can't describe something to people outside of the device as well as I could if I were into it. Because Apple, you know, they're Apple. Oh. Anyway.
I think
Well,
Apple's...
they're getting closer. I mean, the recent versions of iTunes are actually using HTML internally,
Yes.
which with the older ones were using some internal XML markup language and a custom parser and all kinds of crap.
It only took them like
they're
3
getting
years.
close to it. Yeah, no, I know. It's internal turf wars.
Oh,
All right, so as we...
The giant Scoble. Ah!
see, this is why Flash is dead. Do we want to see that? I just want to ask the chat room on the way out to tell us whether or not you know, you're going to be buying an iPad or not. And
is there still a chat room?
yes,
Oh yeah,
there
they're
is.
still there.
Yeah, there's still a friend feed. There's still a what is it that we call this? Oh yeah, the Gillmor Gang. Well, I want to thank Danny Sullivan. I want to thank Kevin Marks. I want to thank Tina for doing these rapid cuts in no particular order. I want to thank Andrew Keene and this guy with the big eye, whoever he is. Robert Scoble, thanks. I want to thank especially Rackspace. Without their support, this show would not exist. And even with their support, sometimes it doesn't exist. And I want to thank the fabulous New Tech TriCaster for helping us to bring this to you. And I want to thank everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.